All right, so my silicone coolant caps came in. I got some vacuum caps I'm gonna put on the backside of the intake manifold just to cover up those open lines and that. So I'm gonna get those installed, and then I can start working on getting the intake done and back in, and then I will also have to work on pulling this front bumper off as well. But so let me get those caps in place, and then I can start doing what I got to do next. All right, and the first one is on, easy peasy, nice and tight. And I'm gonna do this one here. Oh, can we see it? There it is. I'm gonna do that one next. And just like that, that one's on. Okay, so that solves those two. And I'm gonna do the intake side so I don't forget, and then I'm gonna start working the intake back into the car. All right, so 1/2 inch caps on. I'm gonna go ahead and put the clamps on just to keep them from falling off, but to me it looks a little nicer, so it's not necessary. All right, so clamps are on, tubes are on. So other than going inside and getting the bolts for the intake spacer, because I didn't bring them out of the house, that's ready to go. So we'll start reassembling the intake. All right, so the instructions on Bombas says to use a pair of vice grips to do this. I just usually double nut it, tighten it down, and then once you do that, you should be able to break it free. So I already did that, as you can see. Now I'm just going to take the nuts off, do this last one that's hiding here, and that's it. Very simple. And just as easy, the other one came out. So that's all there is to it. I am going to put a little thread lock in there when I put it back together, just so they don't back out. But I gotta look for my thread lock, so I'll either making a run to the parts store, or I will have to hopefully find my red Loctite floating around here somewhere. Well, I couldn't find my red, but I found I guess this is blue. This is a medium strength for intake manifold. I think that will be plenty strong enough. Okay. All right, so next I'm gonna go get the studs and see about getting things started to put back in there. All right, I could have swore the guy that sent me this Bomba intake and carb space or throttle body spacer said he never installed it. But when I opened up the hardware, all the washers except for one was missing. So I had to look around the house, and I found some copper ones. That should work out just fine. All we're trying to do is distribute some of the pressure, because these heads on these bolts are narrower. They don't have the built-in washer like the stock ones did. So yeah, so we're going to go ahead and use those and get that started in there. All right, since there's no threaded studs sticking out of the head now, you just kind of have to set that in there, and you're going to have to finesse everything in place once you get the intake back into the hole. So we'll see how this goes. All right, so after a little wiggling and a little fiddling, I got all the holes to line up, and I've got the threads started on the bolts. I'm just doing them by hand tight. I'm not putting a wrench on it. I'm just twisting an extension with my fingers. This way I don't cross thread anything until everything is back to where it's supposed to be. So I'm using one hand to kind of lift the intake to make sure that it's level. But it is a tight fit down in there. I don't know if you can see that with my fingers in there, but yeah, definitely a much tighter fit than it used to be. But it's in. So we're going to go ahead and finish getting those snugged down, and then we will get the throttle body in place. Well, actually, we'll get the hoses and all these wires back in place while we still got room. We'll do that next. So snug this down, not tight, just snug it down until it's flush and everything seems to be in place. And I'm on the last one here. Like I said, I'm just no wrench, just tightening this down. It's almost at the bottom. All right. Now they're all nice and snug. Just go through. I mean, we are dealing with plastic and aluminum, so you don't want to cross thread anything, you don't want to bind anything because you may end up breaking it. So alternator was all put back together. Here's our main power cable. We're going to be able to put that right back to where it was. And you can see where that yellow tape mark is way down there, yellow and blue one. You can even see the blue one is below where it used to sit inside this hole. So, but this does fit right back where it was. So next thing is we're going to connect all the wires back up and finish tightening this down. Put all the bolts back here in this harness. We'll get the hose back, the vacuum hose back on where it's supposed to be. And then this one here will go back to where it was supposed to be. So that's where we're at now. We're just plugging in hoses and plugging in connectors until everything is back. And then we can get the intake, or the throttle body, I call it an intake, throttle body back in place with its spacer, and we can move on. So this is our part that goes to the top of the throttle body right here. You got this one here that goes into your cold air intake or your intake tube, and then this one should, if I remember, go back up in here. Yep. So, all right. So yeah, we're just going to continue plugging away, and I'll be back once I have things tightened up a bit. All right. So main wiring harnesses bolt is done and tightened, plugged back in. I have lightly snugged all those down intake manifold bolts down with the wrench now, lightly snugged. I'm going to double check the torque spec. I don't think it's very much, so I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to get these two bolts back in here for this other piece of harness, and then I'll start plugging in all those connectors as well. All right, so these are both tightened down, just snugged down because they don't need to be torqued or anything like that. They're all good. So now we're going to work on re-plugging in all of our connectors. A little tip on these waterproof connectors: if you're having a problem getting them to seat easily, and can take some of this silicone spray, put it on a Q-tip, wipe down the rubber side, and they will slide together very easy. And like that, it all went back together. It was a lot easier putting those back together since I had the space. I didn't have to use any tools or anything. I could actually get my hands down in there. So they are all now in their new homes. They're away from the fan, so they're not going to go inside there when it's spinning. But yeah, they're all reconnected, easy peasy. I rehooked up my factory vacuum line. I'm going to be removing all these yellow ones and probably getting some black silicone to replace them later. But yeah. Okay, so the next part is getting this vacuum pump line plugged back on, and that'll be the next little one because that's the most difficult. And then I'll work these ones up here at the top and get them all put back together. Can't remember what side I had that. I think I had it on that side. Okay. All right. So yeah, so coming right along. So intake is pretty much in place. I have all that space between the intake and the starter. So when I run the oil cooler lines to wherever they're going to go over here, I will have a path. So, all right. The wife just called, so I need to run inside and see what she needs. All right. So I got that hose back on there. You can't really see it because of the angle, but now I just got to work the clamp on. That was kind of a trick. I had to spin the clamp around to a side I can actually access it to. Oh, there you go. Now you can see it. All right, and then once I get that finished up, I can go ahead and start putting the throttle body and spacer on. Now, again, I could have swore I was told that this was new. They never installed it, but every single bolt is jinky. So I'm gonna see if how bad it is. I may just order some new bolts. Man, if you don't have the right tools, don't fuck with this shit like that. That's just stupid. So I'm gonna check it out real quick, see if it's worth trying to install. If not, I'll just order up some new bolts, or maybe make a quick trip over to the auto parts store and pick up some new ones. Yeah, who knows? All right, so I'm gonna get that clamp done, and then we'll see what I have to do to get this set up. Okay, and one side note, that bolt that goes on the bottom of the intake that I couldn't find initially, this one right here, where my finger is, no longer is connected to the bottom of the thing. So there was no adapter or anything in the thing, and there's no mention of it anywhere in the Bumba instructions. So apparently when you put the spacer on, you don't have to worry about that bolt anymore. So just FYI, you're going to end up with at least one extra bolt. Me, I'm going to end up with a couple because I took off all those damn brackets and I didn't put the bolts back in. So, all right. So next thing is we're going to try this. I'm going to check these bolts real quick. All right, so I was able to find a good fitting Allen for that. Let me see if I can figure out what size that is. Of course, I can't read the damn number. Of course, I can't read it. I'm not sure what size it is, but I test fitted it against my entire rail until I had one that was nice and snug in there. So it's in there. I put the Bumba spacer with the vacuum port facing up, so in case I do want to put something else in there, I don't have to hunt for it or try to get it from the back side, because initially I had it back here, but then I figured I wouldn't be able to reach it, and the Bumba thing is on the bottom anyway, so you know, what good does it do if you're not going to be able to read it no matter what direction that's in. So all right, so the only other thing I have to do up here is of course plug in the plug, which is right here, and then I've got to hook back up this guy, and we will drop our vacuum hose back over that guy and put that bracket back on, and that pretty much finishes up this. So let me go ahead and get those last few things done, and then it's getting a little warm. I'm getting a little tired, but I'll probably come back out here in a little while, pull the front end off, and get all of this wiring over here. I need to pull this intercooler pipe out of here just so I can clean up the wiring a bit. So, and that'll give me room to start mounting the oil cooler anyway. All right, so I got rid of the bracket that holds the throttle body wire. Where's my hand? There it is. So I got rid of there was a metal bracket that goes to this one bolt here that held this wire. I went ahead and got rid of it. You know, weight savings, everything I can do. Plugged in the throttle body back in on the radiator hose. I don't know if you can see that, but the two holes that originally that used, because of the throttle body spacer, everything got moved over. But luckily there was one hole already in that plastic that was farther out, so I just used the bottom hole. There's not an upper. So now the coolant lines are back in their stock location. So so far everything mostly looks stock. My question is, will my engine cover still fit since everything moved? It may or may not. Now they say you can put it back on, which is probably you're just going to use the two back ones, because if not, then your oil cap won't line up. But probably won't be running it much, because I do know that they help keep the heat inside, and we want to get as much heat out of this thing as possible. So pretty much all the wiring's hooked back up. I do have something unplugged over here. Kind of figure out what I had plugged in there. Can't see an open plug right there, but that's part of my JB4. So yeah, that's the next step. Everything else is plugged in. All the wires are connected. The only thing I have left here is this one that goes back into the cold air intake. The hose is all down here gone. Like I said, I cut my tubes and plugged those, so there's nothing hanging out there. So cleaned it up a little bit. At least that's for me. You know, somebody else is probably going to do it a little differently. These are the throttle bodies. Bolts are just snug, not tight, and the intake manifold are snug, not tight. I'm going to have to look up the specs on that. And then, like I said, I got to pull the front end off and then start looking to see where things are going to line up. As far as for the oil cooler, I'll run the lines, and then there'll be a video here in the middle of all this that explains what's going on with the oil cooler sandwich plate. All right, back in a bit.